You know, some of the most common things in our lives have the most incredible and sometimes hidden stories. Today, we're talking about vanilla. And this isn't just a story about a flavor. It's a story about a global mystery, a priceless secret, and the 12-year-old enslaved boy who managed to solve it all.
Okay, so let's dive right in. For hundreds of years, the world was obsessed with the vanilla orchid. You could grow it in lots of different places, but it had this one super frustrating secret. Outside of its home in Mexico, the flower would bloom, it looked beautiful, but it would never ever produce a vanilla bean, not one. So the big question was, why? What was going on?
Well, the reason was actually pretty simple, but it was impossible for anyone to figure out for centuries. See, back in Mexico, there's this one specific local bee that had perfectly evolved to pollinate the vanilla orchid, and without that one tiny insect, the plant was basically useless. This single species of bee held a global monopoly on one of the most desired spices in the world, which made vanilla an insane luxury that only the absolute wealthiest could even dream of tasting.
All right, now let's jump over to the 1840s, to a place called Réunion Island. It's a small French colony in the Indian Ocean. A plantation owner there, a guy named Ferréol Bellier-Beaumont, had been trying to grow vanilla for more than 20 years. And just like everyone else, he got these beautiful flowers, but not a single bean. He was right on the verge of giving up. But the person who had cracked this global puzzle, well, it wasn't some famous botanist in a fancy European lab. Nope, it was a 12-year-old boy, an enslaved servant on that exact same plantation. His name was Edmond.
So one day, in 1841, Bellier-Beaumont is walking through his garden, and he sees something he thinks is impossible. 2 vanilla pods actually growing on his vine. He's over the moon, thinking it must be some kind of miracle. But then, young Edmond speaks up and says, "No, I'm the one who did that." Can you just imagine the shock? How could this kid possibly succeed where the world's best scientists had completely failed?
So how in the world did he figure it out? Well, Edmond's discovery wasn't just a lucky guess. It was all about keen observation. A few months before, he'd watched someone show how to pollinate watermelon flowers. The guy explained it as marrying the male and female parts of the flower to make fruit. And that simple idea, that a person could step in and help nature along, it just stuck with him.
So Edmond starts looking really closely at the vanilla orchid, and he notices this tiny little detail that had stumped literally everyone else. It's a little flap of tissue called the rostellum, and its whole job is to physically separate the male and female parts so the flower can't pollinate itself. This little flap, this was the lock, and Edmond was about to find the key.
And this is his technique. It's just so simple, so elegant, and absolutely revolutionary. He'd take a small twig, or even a blade of grass, and he would carefully lift that little rostellum flap out of the way. Then, with just a gentle pinch, he'd press the 2 parts of the flower together. He had become the bee. He had married the flower.
The impact was immediate, and it was huge. Bellier-Beaumont knew exactly how big of a deal this was and told the governor. And pretty soon, young Edmond was being sent all across Réunion Island, teaching his special hand pollination method to all the other plantation owners.
And the results were just staggering. I mean, look at this growth. In 1841, the island exported 0 vanilla. Zilch. By 1848, it's a small but significant 50 kilograms. And from there, it just explodes. By the end of the century, we're talking 200 tons of vanilla a year. Just let that sink in for a second.
So here's the kicker. The simple, brilliant technique discovered by a 12-year-old boy didn't just create a whole new industry for his island. It completely shattered Mexico's natural monopoly and changed the global vanilla trade forever.
But what happened to Edmond, the boy who gave the world affordable vanilla? Well, this is where the story takes a turn. It doesn't have the happy ending you might be hoping for.
So when slavery was finally abolished on the island in 1848, Edmond was given his freedom and a last name, Albius. But his life was still incredibly difficult. At one point, he was even arrested for theft and sentenced to 10 years of hard labor. It was like his monumental contribution to the island's entire economy had just been forgotten.
But his former owner, Ferréol Bellier-Beaumont, he never forgot. He fiercely defended Edmond's legacy, especially when another botanist tried to take credit. He wrote this powerful plea to the governor, and he successfully got Edmond an early release, making sure his name would always be tied to the breakthrough.
And right here, this is the tragic irony of his life. Edmond Albius, the boy whose discovery made incredible fortunes for plantation owners and traders all over the world,
He saw almost none of that wealth. He lived the rest of his life in poverty and died when he was just 51 years old.
And yet, his legacy is literally everywhere. If you've ever had real vanilla ice cream, or a cupcake, or even perfume, you have this young boy's incredible curiosity to thank for it. His simple, brilliant method from 1841 is still the main way we cultivate vanilla all around the world today.
You know, Edmond's story really makes you think, and it forces us to ask a really important question. It's a powerful reminder that history is just full of brilliant people whose names we might never know, innovators whose world-changing ideas have been overlooked or just erased. Who else is out there, waiting for their story to be told?